Sorry. We're here on a final hearing. Mr. Albee is with us for the department. I say he is. Oh, he's still connecting to the audio. And Casa is with us. Ms. Kincaid is with us representing the children. Mr. Vasquez is with us representing the father, Mr. Barrios Cabrera, who is with us. All right, Mr. Pirtle's now with us, representing the mother, Ms. Afanador, who is not with us. Mr. Vasquez, I see that you filed a jury request in May, late May. So obviously we will not be going forward on a final hearing today. So we have a dismissal date of July 17th. There's no way we can possibly have a jury trial before July 17th, obviously. So I will be extending this case as there's no other way to give you your jury trial if you still want it.
I think if we make an agreement, Your Honor, I'd waive the jury trial, Your Honor.
Okay, well, I won't require you to do that today. We'll just go ahead I will grant on the court's own motion, a motion to extend this case and retain it on the court's docket to allow Mr. Cabrera to have his jury trial if he chooses to do so after this hearing. So Mr. Albee, we will just proceed as a permanency hearing. So you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is Darius Ray in your waiting room?
Yes, sir, he is. I don't see that we have
An
interpreter. Haley, did we get an interpreter for Mr. Barrios Cabrera?
Yes. Let me check on that.
Okay.
We did.
All right. Okay. We had a hearing on this in May, so we wouldn't have to go forward even today as a permanency hearing if we run into some problems.
All right, Your Honor.
For the record, all of the attorneys in CASA went into a breakout room to discuss where we are today. I think I'd already put it on the record. Mr. Vasquez had filed a request for a jury trial in May. This was set for final. Obviously, we can't hold the jury trial today, so I have already, on the court's own motion, extended this case and retained the case on the court's docket. Alex, before we go any further, do you need your client's there in your office, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you need to go talk to him real quickly about what we're doing, or?
If the court would allow me 2 minutes, Your Honor.
Sure, that's fine. Sure. I want to be sure we're all on board before we announce an agreement. Ms. Kincaid, are you going to want to put some things on the record?
Just during my recommendations, if that's what you'd like me to do, Judge.
Okay. Well, we've got Richard with us, and he's with us for the next hearing also. So let's go ahead. Haley, you and Richard set up what you need to so that he can interpret for Mr. Cabrera, he's under Alex Vasquez too, but he's the gentleman in the white plaid shirt. He's the one that we need to interpret.
Your Honor, if you don't mind, could I call placement just so that, because she knows more, I mean, she can describe in detail some of the needs the kids have.
Okay. All right, then. As I stated earlier, the attorneys have met this morning, and we have, I think we've come to an agreement on what we're going to do today since there is a jury request on file. The court intends to continue the department's temporary managing conservator and order a monitor return of the children to Mr. Cabrera. There are some issues about whether or not Mr. Cabrera has all of the medical equipment and the training to use it for the children. That's why the court is going to order a transition monitored return. The parties and the department and the parties will get together, and we'll try to get Mr. Cabrera any additional training that he needs before we can actually send the children home to him in a safe manner. Be sure all their specialists are set up. So just to have a clear record, Mr. Vasquez, again, I'm not asking you to withdraw your jury request. If something goes south down the road, since we've extended the case, we'll have time to set up that jury trial if you want it.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. If no one else has witnesses, Ms. Kincaid, I believe you did want to call a witness to discuss some of the issues that may involve when the children actually go home. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Who would you like to call?
Miss Edmondson. Okay. Kimberly, you're the placement for the children. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what we're doing today is just allowing the court and the parties to be aware of the extensive medical care that the children require. Can you tell me a little bit about, just walk me through an average morning with Genesis?
Yes. So an average morning with Genesis, we would get up at about 6 a.m. I do work during the day, so I do have to get them to school. So we get up at about 6 a.m. I'll get her out of bed. We begin putting on her orthotics. So her body orthotics is a 4-piece item. So it has a front chest plate, a rear chest plate, a structured piece to help with her posture, and then a hip and leg piece. So we put that on. That takes about 30 minutes. Then we get her dressed. I fix her hair. We'll put on her orthotic shoes. So those are from the right below the knee all the way through to over the bottom of her foot. So we'll put those on, and then her specially designed shoes that go with the orthotics, because they are larger than a typical shoe, so she can't wear a typical shoe. And then we'll do the same thing with brother. He also has the same orthotic suit. His is actually 7 pieces, so it's a little bit more, it takes a little bit longer. Get him dressed. He has ankle to middle of foot orthotics and specialized shoes, and so we get those on. Then I'll take them to school, unless it is a Monday or Wednesday. Mondays and Wednesdays we have therapy days, and so instead of going to school in the mornings, we take them to physical, occupational, and speech therapy. So Genesis has an hour of physical therapy, an hour of occupational therapy, and 30 minutes of speech therapy on Mondays and Wednesdays. Whereas Geraldo, her brother, has an hour of physical therapy, 30 minutes of occupational therapy, and 30 minutes of speech therapy on Mondays and Wednesdays. So he gets a little bit less therapy, but they're still both in the clinic for that whole window of time. And then we would take them to school. They're in school till about 4 at the moment with the Head Start system that they're in. When we pick them up from school, we'll come back home. We usually do about an hour to an hour and a half of some of their physical therapy things. So for Genesis, that would be putting her in her stander and having her do different exercises in that to help with her core strength, her leg strength, and help build the muscles throughout her body since she has low muscle tone. For Jeffrey,
so can you explain explain what the stander is?
So the stander is it's a medical device that is a flat tilt and pivot board at the bottom with a steel rod going up it. And so you stand her up against the steel rod, and then you have to brace her shoes in, you have to brace her knees in, and then brace in her waist or her hips. It goes directly around her hips, across the tops of her knees and across the tops of her feet so that she can't like crumble under her own weight. So it provides some stability for her standing, but it also forces her body to activate the muscles that it takes to stand. As she gets taller, there is an additional chest plate that could be activated. Since we are trying to work on her core strength as well, we don't use that one just yet because we want her to have the ability to move up and down in the stander to help with her core strength. Whereas the chest plate would support her chest entirely, and so she wouldn't be activating any of those muscles. So that is her stander, and we use it for usually it's about an hour to an hour and a half a day. The physical therapist, that's one of her strongest recommendations, is that we use that every single day. And so we'll have her like lean over, grab her toys, do lots of different kind of reaching exercises to help activate those muscles.
Okay, so that kind of gives an idea of what a sort of a typical day is like. It's my understanding that she's also got some other medical equipment that she's been prescribed. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, she has. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, she has a wheelchair, and it's a solid piece wheelchair, so it doesn't collapse down. Those are more stable and they last a little bit longer. So she does have one of those. She has a special needs car seat that is specifically designed for her. She does have a bath chair, the stander. She has currently on order. We have not received it yet. We just got the prescription for it. She'll have a device called a cough assist that will force air in through the mouth and will help force coughing out. Due to her weak muscle tone, she doesn't have the strength to cough. So she's had pneumonia twice just during her placement with me. And that's just due to not being able to get any liquid out of her lungs when she does get sick.
Okay, and how often are the doctors recommending that she use that cough assist?
The cough assist she will have to use twice a day, in the morning and in the night. And then she does also have 4 prescription medications that she takes daily.
Okay, and recently she was referred to an audiologist, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
Okay.
we referred for audiology. They did a sedated ABR after they inserted tubes in her ears, and they noted a abnormality in her hearing in her left ear. So they sent us for a second awake hearing test. and it confirmed the results of the ABR that she is profoundly deaf in the left ear, but does have good hearing in her right ear.
Okay, and so there's going to be a follow-up to see whether she qualifies for a cochlear implant as well. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
Okay.
they'll have to do some MRIs. And then if the MRIs show that her cochlea is properly developed and everything is functioning, just not able to hear, they'll go forward with all of the steps of a cochlear implant trial.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Edmondson, you may not know the answer to this, but do you know, has Mr. Cabrera been trained in the use of all of the medical equipment that these two kiddos need?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And that's something with what you testified to, do you think that he's going to have to be trained in the use of all that equipment and their medications and their appointments before the kids would be safe to be returned to him?
In my opinion, yes, sir.
Okay. I think you've earned the right for an opinion.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have any other witnesses? No.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Then Ms. Kincaid, recommendations?
Your Honor, we've agreed to the transition monitored return. I just recommend that, we make sure that Mr. Vasquez is able to care for the children and receive all the training that he needs before the children are placed with them permanently.
Okay. Mr. Cabrera, you mean, not Mr. Vasquez?
Yes. I'm sorry. I just looked at the screen.
Okay. All right then. Okay. And Ms. Wyatt, anything else from CASA?
We would agree with that. We just want dad to be successful and have everything in place to allow him to be successful to have his children back in his home.
Okay, thank you. All right, then, as I said, I have extended this case and retained it on the court's docket due to the jury request. I will continue the department's temporary managing conservator. I will order a transition monitor return of the children to Mr. Cabrera. And as I discussed with all the attorneys in CASA in this case, the department and St. Francis, everyone's going to have to work, and Mr. Cabrera are going to have to work together to be sure that when these kids go home, they're going to get that daily treatment that Ms. Edmondson just testified to, and it's quite lengthy and apparently quite time consuming. Ms. Edmondson, God bless you for what you're doing for these kiddos.
Thank you.
If there's any problems with coming up with the transition plan, any party can file a motion and the court will be glad to hear it and try to tailor a plan. I'd let all the attorneys know if it comes down to that, I'm going to need testimony from some of these experts. And another thing we talked about that needs to be on the record is we've got to be sure that there are specialists set up for these children in the panhandle before they've got to be able to see their specialists as soon as they're placed back with father. So we've got some obstacles in the road ahead. So let's see, I think I'll set another hearing just so we can try to stay up on this. I've got a September 29 date that obviously we have other hearings. So I'm going to set it for that day. If something comes up and we need to set a special hearing, just let the court know and we'll do it. Otherwise, I'll set the next review hearing for September 29th, 2023. That will be by Zoom like today's hearing. So parties and attorneys can go on the court's online docket a day or two in advance of September 29th to see what time that hearing will take place. Again, Ms. Edmondson, thank you so much for what you're doing. Mr. Cabrera, I wish you a lot of success in learning how to handle these children and all their medical needs. I know you've done everything that's been asked of you, and the court recognizes that today. So for the record, we've had a breakout room with all the attorneys we in will CASA stand to in discuss recess this. on this case is set for a final hearing. I am going to, on the court's own motion, I'm going to extend this case and retain the case on the court's docket. That's pursuant to section 263-403 of the Family Code. This court ordered to monitor return of this case before the original 1 year had expired. And it's this court's position under the statute that I just cited that I have the ability to extend this case for up to 180 days. So I'm going to extend this case. I've let the attorneys know as far as today what the court intends to do, and then I'll allow all parties to put on any evidence they want in case they want to take this to the referring court or if they think they can on appeal. So I've let everybody know I'm going to continue the department's temporary managing conservator, continue the children's current placements with the parents and the grandparents all living in the same household. As far as making progress towards this transition monitored return, I'm going to adopt the recommendations of Dr. Steve Jennings that are contained, as I understand it, on page 9 of the department's report to the court for today's hearing. This is all because of the fact that we have a child in the parent's home that passed away, and there's not been a cause of death determined yet. Everyone is still waiting for the autopsy report from Lubbock. This court's not comfortable sending these children home with the parents unsupervised until we know the cause of death for the child that was under the parents' care and supervision when the child passed away. So that's the reason that I'm extending this case. I believe that that's an extraordinary circumstance that warrants the extension of the case. I talked about the visitation, stepped up visitation for the parents under Dr. Steve Jennings' recommendations on page 9 of the report. The court does specifically find under section 263 of the Family Code that it would be a continuing danger to the physical health and safety of the children to be returned solely to the parents today. I don't make that finding as long as the grandparents are supervising the most of the visitation. And I do find that to return the children to the parents solely today would be contrary to the welfare of the children. All right, that having been said, then let's just go down the list. Mr. Albee, do you want to call any witnesses for whatever purpose you think you need to?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pirtle, do you want to call any witnesses to preserve your record?
Judge, I do not. I would just like to state my objection that because there is no evidence to keep this child from the parents, I'll object to them not being returned.
Okay. I'll overrule that objection. I understand it, and I've tried the best I can to set out my reasoning so that if you do want to take this to the referring court or further, then you can do so. I understand your position. Ms. Kincaid, do you want to call any witnesses as far as to preserve your record?
No, Your Honor, I would just join Mr. Pirtle in the objection to not returning the child today.
Okay. All right. Ms. Grant, do you need to put anything on the record as far as witnesses?
No witnesses, Your Honor. Okay,
thank you. All right. Then Ms. Grant, you've already heard me say what I'm going to rule, but do you have anything else to recommend to me today?
No, Your Honor. I think that after discussions with the therapist for the child, I think that he has a plan in place to increase some contact and do some observations of the parents with the child that may resolve the safety concern at some point. But I concur with the court's own motion that there is a significant safety concern due to the death of a child in the home previously of unknown cause, that we should continue the case and observe the parents in some type of stepped up visitation plan as recommended on page 9 of the report.
Okay, thank you. And from CASA, Ms. Clark, you or the volunteer or Ms. White or both of you, you were in the meeting with us. You've heard what the court's announced. Is there anything that you all want to recommend in addition?
We would be in agreement with Ms. Grant, and we understand the judge's ruling, and we are in agreement with that as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, then I will stand by my ruling. The case will be extended and retained on the court's docket. Department continued temporary managing conservator. Children's placement continued with the grandparents and the parents living in the same household as previously ordered by the court. I have made the findings of danger under section 263 of the Family Code, and I will adopt the transition monitored return, include Dr. Jennings' recommendations for additional visitation for the parents as set out on page 9 of the report to the court for this hearing. Let's see. I'm going to set the next review hearing for September 29th. That will be a permanency hearing. If we get that autopsy report prior to September 29th, then I'll be ready to hear this as a final on September 29th if we don't resolve it prior to that. And if we get everything we need, all the parties are ready, and it's prior to September 29th, get in touch with our office and we'll try to move that with us for the department. CASA is with us. Ms. Talley is with us. Mr. Harris, the ad litem for the child, can't be with us today, but he has sent me a recommendation, which I will disclose here in a minute. Ms. Lucero is with us representing the father, Mr. Stiegel. He's not in our waiting room. Ms. Lucero, were you expecting him?
Your Honor, I did leave him a message and send him the link, but I hadn't heard back from him. If he does appear, Your Honor, I would ask for a few minutes for a breakout room, but I don't know if he'll be here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The mother, Ms. Klein, I don't know if anyone does know, is she still incarcerated or do we know?
I don't know that she is, Your Honor. Yolanda Nowak is the.
Okay, that was my next question. I'll get Ms. Novak in. I know everybody else in the waiting room is for a later hearing. Everyone is present except Mr. Harris, the ad litem for the children, and neither parent is present. This case was set for 10 o'clock. It's now 10:08. So, Mr. Albee, you may proceed in the parent's absence.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would call Ms. Novak. Novak, you're St. Francis Ministries Permanency Specialist.
Yes.
in that capacity. Are you familiar with the child, the subject of this suit?
Yes,
Hadley is how old?
she's almost 6 months.
And where is she currently placed?
She's placed in a foster home in Amarillo, Texas.
And is that placement meeting all of her needs?
Yes, sir.
Are there any special issues or special needs that have arisen with this child that we need to make the court aware of?
She does, one of her tear ducts, I think it's her left eye, is not fully functioning, but she has seen the doctor for it, and he's only recommended massaging it, and foster mom is doing that. But other than that, she is healthy.
She was born with some traces of methamphetamine in her system.
Yes, she was. I'm sorry.
Has she had any withdrawal symptoms? Are we past that at this point?
She did have withdrawal symptoms at first. Foster mom reported that she would like shudder sometimes, but those have stopped, and she doesn't seem to have any other symptoms.
Child's mother is Miss Krista Klein.
Yes.
Do you know if Miss Klein is currently incarcerated?
I do not know, sir.
Have you had any contact with Miss Klein since the status hearing, which was the last hearing we had?
Yes. In April, they had a visitation with Hadley. Miss Klein and Mr. Segal were both there. And they, it appeared that Mrs. Klein was under the influence of something, and that visit did not go very well. We asked for them both to do an oral swab drug screen in the office, and they both refused. And since then, I've had limited contact. It's mainly just been through text. I've tried to reach out, and last month, Mrs. Klein, we had a set meeting at the office. She did not appear, but Mr. Segal did. But it's just been random text from her asking for updates on Hadley.
Mr. Jerry Segal is the father of this child. There was a court-ordered service plan for Mr. Segal. Has he worked the services in that plan?
He has started them, but he did not complete them. He started his parenting classes, and once he missed so many, it was with Fatherhood Fire, and Fatherhood Fire discontinued them and said that he would have to re-register for it, and he has not made contact to do that. He has not been appearing for drug screens. He has not started counseling. He has not provided proof of employment. And they have not had visitations since they have refused to drug screen.
Miss Klein was also ordered to work services. Has she worked any services at this point?
She has registered to do the rational behavior therapy class, but she has not complied. She registered for it a couple times, but she did not appear or complete the class. She did complete her OSAR with Linda Dudley, and Linda recommended for her to do inpatient rehab, and she refused to do inpatient rehab, stating that she could not be away from Hadley for that long. She did complete the drug screen at the beginning of the case, but since April, she has not completed a drug screen or started any other services.
All right, just a couple of things. First of all, do you believe that it would be in the best interest of this child and for us to understand what's going on if both Mr. Segal and Mr. Klein were ordered to drug screen?
I'm sorry, can you
Are you
say that again?
asking? Are you asking for both parents to be ordered to drug screen today?
Yes.
And that you're asking for both a hair follicle and a UA analysis on both parents?
Yes. If they are ordered to drug screen today, the clinic in Pampa, which is where they usually go to, closes at noon on Fridays. So I would recommend that I have time to send them to a place in Amarillo, sir.
Okay. Now, as far as you know, Miss Klein is not incarcerated. She's actually communicated with you as if she is not incarcerated.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
But neither she nor Mr. Segal have alleviated any of the reasons that Hadley was removed from their care?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Okay. The reasons that Hadley was removed from the parents have not been fixed or alleviated. They're still the same.
Yes, that is correct.
And you would agree with me, it would be dangerous for this child to return them to either parent at this time.
Yes, sir, it would.
And it would be contrary to her general welfare to return to either parent at this time.
Yes, it would.
Are you therefore asking that the department be continued as temporary managing conservator of Hadley?
Yes, sir, I am.
And that we leave the child's placement where the child is doing well?
Yes, sir, I am.
I'll pass with you, Sean.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lucero.
Yes, Ms. Novak, the last contact that you had with the father in this case, when was that exactly about?
He actually texted me last night asking why she hasn't been placed with the family that they wanted Hadley to be placed with. We conducted a home study on that home, and I replied to him this morning, letting him know that the home study was denied because of per policy 6600, the family does not, by definition, meet the requirements as a kinship fictive kin home. He also asked why his attorney, have not made contact with him, and I responded in a text telling him I was unsure, and I provided your name and phone number, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Now, let me ask, I know that the department, I guess it was I just saw the home study a bit ago. I saw it was e-filed, I guess, earlier today. Even though it's not a fictive, I guess, kinship home, so it's y'all's policy that the child cannot be placed there, right?
It was denied. I can read you the statement of the policy if you would like. They didn't meet the requirements of a kinship home.
Okay.
Do you want me to read?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
But
Sorry.
my question is, other than that, I mean, the home was appropriate and there were no issues. I'm sorry, I just haven't had a chance. I just saw it come through.
Yeah,
So I haven't had
I'm
a chance to
sorry.
read.
It was just denied. I just received it last night and I filed it this morning, the redactive copy. So yes, it was just done this morning. So I know you haven't had time to look at it. There were a few concerns with the home. There wasn't any concerns like physically with the home. Mr. and Mrs. Elrod did not have a history of a relationship with the child or the child's family. Another concern was Mr. and Mrs. Elrod's citizenship could not be verified. A concern of the pet vaccinations were needed, and the trampoline needs padding around the springs. Another concern was the background checks were needed for Diana Davis, a frequent visitor and emergency backup for the caregiver. And those concerns, I did speak with Mr. Elrod last night. If the home study was approved, they would be aware of the, since it just happened, we would let them know those concerns so they could correct them. But since it was denied, they did, I did let him know last night, but since it was denied, it was not an issue for them to correct them.
Okay, and let me ask you, Ms. Novak, the child was placed soon after birth. Isn't that correct with the foster family?
Yes, ma'am. She was positive for methamphetamines at birth and was removed shortly after birth.
So at that point, the foster family also didn't have an ongoing relationship with this child the same way as the Elrods don't, because she was just born and she was removed, correct?
Correct, but the foster home was licensed.
Okay.
The licensed foster home.
All right, and as far as the dog vaccinations and like I said, the child's not 6 months, not even 6 months old. So really the trampoline right now really isn't a physical issue for the child. Wouldn't you agree with me?
Yes, but it still needs to be corrected.
Okay. And as far as citizenship, proof of citizenship, what is it the department's requiring? Their birth certificates?
I'm not sure, but I would assume it would be birth certificates, ma'am.
Okay. And then a background check on the frequent visitor to the home. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And do the Elrods have any children or have they raised any children of their own, or do you know?
Yes, they have 3 children.
In the home?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, I'll pass the witness.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Harris again is not with us today. Anyone have further questions for Ms. Novak?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Novak, I think you testified to this, but Mother's OSARD recommended that she do inpatient. That was the #1 recommendation, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I read in your report that Mr. Stegall has admitted to the department that he needs inpatient treatment for his drug problem.
Yes, sir, he has.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, then. As far as anyone else have any other witnesses? No.
Your Honor. We rest.
Okay. All right. As far as Mr. Harris, the child's attorney ad litem, he could not be with us. He sent me an email. Mr. Harris is recommending that I order that both parents successfully complete the inpatient drug treatment program and that their visitation be suspended until they provide negative hair strand and U8 drug screens. All right, then, Ms. Talley, does CASA have anything to add?
Nothing, Your Honor. We're in agreement with the ad litem and the department.
Okay. All right, then. Based on what I've heard, then I will continue the department's temporary managing conservator, continue Hadley's current placement. I'll order both parents to successfully complete an inpatient drug treatment program. I will order both parents' visitation be suspended until they, I'm just going to say until further court order. And I will order both parents to both hair strand and UA drug screen. I'll make it by 4 p.m. on Monday, July 10th, to give them time knowing that the facility closes early today. So.
Your Honor, may I had a question. Would it be possible, I want to meet with my client and talk with him, and I understand that the LRODs there in, I guess, in Hutchinson County aren't related to this child, but would it be possible to have a placement hearing? It doesn't seem that the concerns for placement are safety or anything like that related. It's just that they're not blood related, I guess, to the child. So I didn't know if the court would even consider placing the child there, and I would ask for a placement hearing.
Well, you can file a motion for one, and obviously I'll give you a hearing on it.
Okay.
So
All
yeah,
right,
that's
okay.
always an option. It might carry a little more weight with the court if Mr. Stegall chose to show up and be a part of this case. So
I understand. I understand. I'll speak with him, Your Honor. Thank you.
okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Our next hearing, review hearing will be on November 1st, 2023. Ms. Schulte is with us for the department. CASA is with us. Mr. Valdez, and I think Ms. Herrera was with us too. Mr. Adams is with us representing the child. Ms. Archer is with us representing the father, Mr. Rico, who is with us. And Ms. Grant is with us representing the mother, Ms. Gonzalez. She is not with us and not in the waiting room. Ms. Grant, were you expecting your client?
I have not heard, Judge, but I'm prepared to proceed.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. That accounts for everyone. Ms. Schulte, you may proceed.
I'd call Danielle Smick. When did you receive that investigation?
Give me 1 second because I'm really bad with the dates on this case. We had a lot of stuff coming in at one time. I believe this case first came to me in January of 2022.
What were the concerns that you were investigating?
We received a report about the school having a hard time reaching mom at one point, but the big concern was that we had not seen the mother in a while, and there was concern that she was using drugs and leaving her child with the caregiver for extended periods of time.
During that December, January investigation, were you able to make contact with her? And by her, I mean Jasmine.
During the initial investigation, we did attempt to go out to the home on multiple occasions. She would shut the door in my face. She would not meet with me. During that time, we requested, the first report that we requested was an order to aid in order for me to see the home and see Azriel. And then after that, we also had to do an order to participate to get mom to even interact with the department and to drug screen for the department.
During the duration of your investigation, did you learn that Ms. Gonzalez had been arrested?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you discuss her arrest with her?
Yes, I did.
What did she indicate to you she had been arrested for?
She reported that she had been pulled over by the police in Hereford, and that once she'd been in handcuffs, they searched her car and located drugs in her car, but she stated they were not her drugs and that charge was going to be dropped.
And when you indicate drugs, do you know what drugs were found?
Methamphetamines.
Was there another instance that you discussed with her during the investigation in which methamphetamines were found in her apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that incident?
It was reported to the department that law enforcement had gone out to the home due to a call from the apartment complex stating that when they went in to do an inspection of the apartment, that drugs were found on the counter in the apartment. Law enforcement did state they could see it from the door, but they could not take them from the home.
When you confronted Ms. Gonzalez with that information, what was her response?
She denied any drug use in the home and said they were planted there by the father of Azriel.
During the investigation, did you request that that Jasmine complete a drug screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you request more than once that she complete a drug screen?
Yes, ma'am. She'd been asked on multiple occasions.
When did she finally complete the drug screen?
We received a drug screen on Jasmine Gonzalez in July of 2022.
Did you send her to complete a UA and hair strand drug screen at that time?
I believe so, yes.
Did she complete both of those screens?
Not that I am aware of. I believe she only did one of the two.
And was that a hair strand drug screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, before I proceed, I would like to present for admission into evidence what I marked and sent to all of the parties as Petitioner's Exhibit 1. It is an affidavit of business records from Texas Alcohol and Drug Testing Services as to a hair strain drug screen from Jasmine Gonzalez on July 13th. What were the results of that drug screen?
The hair follicle drug screen on Ms. Gonzalez came back positive for methamphetamines and marijuana.
At that point, did the department take emergency custody of Azriel?
Yes.
At the time that she was removed, were you out on leave?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
You did not personally remove Azriel.
No, I did not.
I'll pass the witness.
All right, thank you, Ms. Grant.
Danielle, during the investigation portion of this case, were you able to maintain contact with Jasmine?
No, I was not. I attempted on multiple occasions to speak with her by phone and in person, and she would not stay in contact with me.
Okay, and do you have any knowledge today where Jasmine may be located?
I have no idea where she's at today.
Thank you. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Archer.
I have no questions for this witness.
All right, Mr. Adams.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, then. Ms. Schulte, do you need Ms. Smith to stay with us?
I don't believe so, Judge. I'd ask that she be excused. I'd call Tasia McIntyre. Before I proceed with this witness, I'd present what I marked and provided to all the parties as Petitioner's Exhibits 2 through 6. Petitioner's Exhibit 2 is also business records from Texas Alcohol and Drug Testing Service related to a screen from April 5th of 2023. Petitioner's Exhibit 3 is certified copies of the temporary orders in this cause number. Petitioner's Exhibit 4 is a certified copy of Jasmine Gonzalez's family plan of service. Petitioner's Exhibit 5 is a certified copy of the status hearing order, and Petitioner's Exhibit 6 is a certified copy of the permanency hearing order before final order in this case. How are you currently employed?
Permanency specialist with St. Francis Ministries.
Are you the permanency specialist for the case?
Yes, ma'am.
Who is Azriel's mother?
Jasmine Gonzalez.
And is she present in the courtroom this morning?
No, ma'am.
And who is Azriel's father?
Jacob Rico.
And he is present, correct?
That's correct.
Have you been permanency specialist on this case since Azriel was removed?
Yes, ma'am.
And were temporary orders entered in this case on August 5th of 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to the adversary hearing, did you supervise a visit between Ms. Gonzalez and her daughter?
Yes.
When was that visit?
Not 100% sure. It had to have been before August 8th.
Where did that visit take place?
The DFPS office in Hereford, Texas.
Did anything happen during that visit that concerned you for Azrael's safety?
Not during the visit, but after. Yes, ma'am.
What happened after the visit?
She did not want to release Azrael to me and her maternal aunt that she was residing with in a kinship placement. She didn't understand why we had Azrael. And then she also told us that she hadn't been served by the court, so we had no right to have her child.
Was placement eventually able to leave with Azrael?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Ms. Gonzalez have any further visits with Azrael?
No, ma'am. After that, she missed 3 in a row, and then I brought it to the court's attention, and they did suspend visits.
Was she notified of the dates and times of each of those visits?
Yes, she was, and she did have to confirm those visits 24 hours in advance with me.
Did she confirm those visits?
No, ma'am.
Did you give her warning that after 3 missed visits, we would request that her visits be suspended?
Yes, ma'am. After each missed visit, I did give her that warning.
Do you know that she received those warnings?
They were by text message, and I also, when I would meet with her, did ask if she did receive them.
At that time, did you have a good contact number for her?
In the beginning of the case, yes, ma'am.
Once her visits were suspended, what did she need to do in order to have those visits reestablished?
She needed to have a hair follicle that was lower than the hair follicle she submitted to on July 13th, and she also needed a negative UA.
Did you send Ms. Gonzalez to drug screen throughout this case?
Yes, ma'am.
In fact, did you send her to drug screen? Is it fair to say monthly?
Yes, ma'am.
She attend drug screens when requested?
No, ma'am. There was only one time she did attend as directed.
Looking back through dates, she drug tested for investigations. Did you send her for a UA and a hair follicle before the adversary hearing on August 5th?
I sure did.
And did she refuse to go?
Yes, ma'am. It was a refusal to test.
On September 16th, 22, was she court ordered to do a UA and hair strand?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she appear for that drug test?
No, ma'am.
On October 3rd, did she complete a UA drug screen?
She completed a UA, but not a hair follicle.
Did she complete, and to be clear, that UA that she did was negative, correct?
That's correct.
Was she continuously sent for UA and hair strand drug screens through April of this year, 2023?
I actually sent her as well in June 16th, 2023 with a no call, no show. So I did send her even last month.
Did she complete another hair follicle drug screen on April 5th, 2023?
Yes, she did.
And was that drug screen positive for meth and marijuana?
That's correct.
Has she ever, during this case, simultaneously provided a negative UA and a hair strand that was lower in levels than what she provided during the investigation?
No, ma'am.
Has Ms. Gonzalez stayed in contact with you regarding Azrael?
No, ma'am.
Has she asked you about how she's doing?
At the start of the case, yes, ma'am, but not since 2023 started.
Has she ever given you any cards or gifts or anything to support Azrael?
No, ma'am.
Objection of relevance.
Overruled.
Has she done anything to attempt to maintain contact with her daughter?
No, ma'am.
Did you create a family service plan for Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes, ma'am.
Were those services designed so that if she successfully completed those services, Azrael could be returned to her care?
Yes, ma'am.
Was Ms. Gonzalez requested to maintain regular contact with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Has she done that?
No, ma'am.
When is the last time you were able to speak to Ms. Gonzalez?
After our last court hearing, she called me asking for her attorney's email, and that was all the conversation was.
Have you attempted to locate her since then?
I sure have.
What attempts have you made?
I went to the residence that I have on file for her, and an elderly lady answered the door and said that she did not know a Jasmine Gonzalez and she did not reside there. Also went and checked. At that point, her being homeless, I drove around Hereford and checked the Hereford Walmart parking lot for her vehicle.
When is the last time that you have known where Ms. Gonzalez was living and known her to have a stable residence?
The last time I was able to make contact with her in a home was in April, but stable residence would be last November before she was evicted from her apartment.
As of right now, to the best of your knowledge, is she homeless?
To the best of my knowledge, because I've not been given a new address.
Was she asked to maintain stable housing and working utilities and allow announced and unannounced visits to her home?
Yes, ma'am.
And she has not done that?
No, ma'am.
Was she asked to locate and maintain stable, appropriate employment?
Yes, ma'am.
To your knowledge, has she been employed during this case?
No, ma'am.
Do you know how she supports herself or how she would support her child?
I do not.
Was Ms. Gonzalez asked to actively participate in and complete parenting classes?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she ever initiate parenting classes?
Not to my knowledge.
Was she asked to maintain a drug-free lifestyle and abstain from the use of illegal drugs?
Yes, ma'am.
Based on her continuous refusal to drug screen and her positive tests, does it appear that she has done that?
No, ma'am.
Was she asked to participate in and complete a substance abuse assessment and follow recommendations?
Yes, ma'am.
Was an appointment set for her to complete an OSAR assessment?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she attend that appointment?
No, ma'am.
Was she asked to participate in and complete rational behavior therapy?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she complete that service?
No, ma'am.
Was she asked to attend individual counseling?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she ever attend counseling?
No, ma'am.
Was she asked to participate in and complete a psychosocial assessment?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she do that?
No, ma'am.
Was she asked to participate in and complete anger control training?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she do that?
No, ma'am.
Was she asked to participate in and complete a mental health assessment?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she do that?
No, ma'am.
Has she done any services to attempt to address the reason that Azriel came into the care of the department?
No, ma'am.
At this time, do you believe that Ms. Gonzalez could provide Azriel with a safe environment to live in?
Absolutely not.
Where is Azriel living today?
She is residing with her father, Jacob Rico,
How long has she been living with him?
since February, I do believe.
Prior to that, was she having extensive visitation with him?
Yes.
Does Mr. Rico have a home that is safe and appropriate?
Definitely.
And has he been meeting Azriel's needs?
Yes, he has.
Have you visited Azriel in his home?
Yes.
Tell me about how she's doing.
That kid is laughing, talking your leg off, just doing well. She's prospering every single day, loves being with her dad. Her favorite thing is to go get snow cones after work and go to the park and play. So she is just growing leaps and bounds since being with her father.
Mr. Rico has stable employment?
Yes.
And has he indicated that that employment is sufficient for him to meet Azriel's needs?
More than enough, actually.
Is the department requesting today that the court terminate Jasmine Gonzalez's parental rights as to Azriel?
That is correct.
And are we asking that Mr. Rico be named Azriel's sole managing conservator?
Yes, ma'am.
We're asking that the department be released today as her temporary managing conservator.
Yes, ma'am.
Why is all of that in her best interest today?
Because being with her father and being raised by her father is in her best interest. Plus, he has been able to prove to this court and everybody involved that he is a safe option for her and wants what's in her best interest, and will continue to look for that in her future.
I'll pass the witness.
Ms. McIntyre, has your phone number remained the same during the pendency of this case?
Mine has not. St. Francis did change it from a Kansas number to a Texas number, but I did notify all my clients when that did change.
And in those notifications, was Jasmine Gonzalez one of the clients that you notified?
Yes, ma'am.
And since that change, have you had contact with her on the new number that you were given after the transitionary period?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you provided with by Jasmine an email during the pendency of this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you used that email to attempt to make contact with her regarding court appearances and other matters, including drug screens?
I have used that email for multiple things, including her family plan of service.
Okay. And that is my next question. Did Jasmine Gonzalez review and sign a service plan with you during the pendency of this case?
She did.
And during that meeting with her regarding her service plan, was it your belief that she understood the contents of the plan?
She understood the contents of the plan, but was still asking why we were involved and didn't understand why the court was falsifying documents and not serving her correctly.
And under your layman's opinion, was that concern for competency issues?
No.
So would it be fair to say the concern was a denial issue?
Yes, ma'am. I'm not a professional in that, but that's also why I referred her to a mental health evaluation.
And did she ever report for or complete any of the evaluations you requested in her service plan?
No, ma'am.
And did her service plan contain the contact information for providers, or would she get that from you?
The service plans involve the providers. I also create a cheat sheet for all of my clients that have on one sheet of paper all the providers they need and all their information, addresses, emails, everything they need.
And in this case, did you provide that same cheat sheet to your recollection to Jasmine Gonzalez?
Yes, ma'am. I do to every client when I hand them their family plan of service.
Okay. And how long ago did you visit the home where the lady answered the door and said she did not know Jasmine Gonzalez?
The last week in June.
Okay. And through the pendency of this case, have you been able to contact me and my office with updates regarding issues that you needed resolved?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, multiple times we discussed this case.
And you've had the ability to get through to my office and make contact with me fairly regularly?
Yeah, no problems.
And is it to your knowledge, has Jasmine Gonzalez's phone number that was provided been disconnected?
Not to my knowledge. All phone calls still go through, messages still deliver. So to my knowledge, that means it's still active.
And you've received no communication from Jasmine requesting an update to her contact information other than what you've been using during this case?
During the last hearing, she gave an updated phone number, and that would have been the third phone number as this case, but not since the last court hearing when that was provided.
And what are the last 3 digits of that phone number, if you know?
Let me look at my phone real quick. 845.
Okay. And if those digits match the last phone number I was provided, would that be the most current information that you have as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any reason to believe this case should continue on past today's date?
Absolutely not. Azriel deserves permanency and deserves to live her life.
Okay. Do you believe that Mr. Rico would be protective of Azriel in regard to contact with the mother should the court terminate her rights?
Jacob's very protective over his child, and he would do anything to protect her.
Okay. Is there any concern in your mind that you could have provided further services for Jasmine Gonzalez that you have not provided today?
No, ma'am.
Pass the witness, Judge.
All right, thank you, Ms. Archer.
Ms. McIntyre, did my client drug screen for this court?
He did in the beginning, but when there was no concerns, those obviously ceased because he proved us there were no concerns. And I've also been in contact with his probation officer that has no concerns as well.
Okay. And has he expressed an interest in you in changing the last name of the child to his last name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What has he said?
He's wanted Azrael to have his last name since he's gonna, hopefully be in the sole managing conservator so that she can also carry on the Rico last name as well.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Ms. McIntyre, if you know, does Mr. Rico have health insurance on Azrael?
I don't believe he does currently, but he is planning on getting it through his job once she doesn't have Medicaid through us any longer.
Okay, so she does have Medicaid through y'all,
Yes, she does currently.
but he is planning to put her on his insurance?
Yes, he is. He's talked about that multiple times and also looked into different doctors that would be on that plan out there at his job.
Very good. Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Anyone have follow-ups for Ms. McIntyre?
No, Judge.
All right. Ms. McIntyre, do you believe that the service plan that was created for Ms. Gonzalez, which I believe was Exhibit 4, was that an attempt on the part of the department to reunify the child with her mother?
Yes, sir.
And I think you've testified to this, but she has not regularly maintained visitation or significant contact with Azrael, has she?
That is correct.
And with her positive drug tests and lack of services, do you believe that she has demonstrated an inability to provide Jasmine with a safe environment?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And you testified to, at the beginning of this case, drugs having been found both in Ms. Gonzalez's car and her apartment. Do you know at that time, was she in charge of taking care of Jasmine? Was she in her custody?
That wasn't me that testified to that. That was the investigator. So I'm unsure of that answer.
Okay. All right. Okay, then any other questions from anyone for Ms. McIntyre?
No, Judge.
Okay. All right, then. Ms. Schulte, do you have any further witnesses?
Yes, I would briefly call Jacob Rico. Mr. Rico, are you the father of Azrael?
Yes, ma'am.
She is currently placed in your home, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to her being removed by CPS, was she living with her mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have contact with Azrael while she lived with her mother?
I would try to call multiple times, and she would just tell me that she was asleep or that she was with a relative. Then finally, I went to go visit in person. I showed up one day in person, and she was with the babysitter since the night before.
Were you concerned for Azrael's safety while she was living with her mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Why is that?
Well, I had I knew for a fact that she was losing a lot of weight, and I knew some of the people that she was hanging around with, and I knew that they were also yes, on drugs as well. And when I confronted her about it, she told me that she was going to the gym and she was losing weight. She was trying to work on her body figure, but I could tell that it obviously wasn't a healthy skinny. You know, it was. And then friends and neighbors that lived in the apartments would say that there was always people in and out of the house late at night, and that the upstairs neighbor could always smell marijuana from the bottom.
To be
Your Honor,
clear,
I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute, but I was trying to say objection hearsay to the statements regarding what the neighbors told him.
Thank
Mr. Rico, to be clear, did you ever plant drugs in Ms. Gonzalez's apartment to try to get her in trouble?
No, ma'am. I was there. I showed up one time, and that's whenever I found the drugs that I took pictures of laying around. And that was the only time that I was ever there at that apartment.
Are you joining the department today and asking that her rights be terminated?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you would have the right to court-ordered child support from Ms. Gonzalez, regardless of whether or not she had visitation or access to Azrael?
Well, my main concern is, putting her on child support and her still having rights to see Azrael. And me personally, I just don't think that would do Azrael any good, considering the fact that she's, going down the road she's going. I just don't want my daughter to get hopes, for her mom to be there one day and then her mom not to, be in and out of her life, and I think it would just be better just to, draw the line here and just terminate it and just, leave it at that.
Can you financially support Azrael?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And what are you asking the court to change her name to?
Mr. Rico, you testified that you were in Ms. Gonzalez's apartment one time, and you testified that you took pictures of drugs. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you heard the testimony from our first witness that the police found drugs in her car, and also that they could visibly see drugs openly on the counter in her apartment. Did you hear that testimony?
Yes, sir.
Is that consistent with what you saw when you were in her apartment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Based on that, did Ms. Gonzalez have the actual care and control and custody of Azriel when?
No, sir.
No, when those things took place. Was Azriel living with her mother when you saw the drugs in the mother's apartment and the police saw open drugs?
Well, when I showed up to the apartment and I seen the drugs laying around, she then called the babysitter to bring my daughter. And when the babysitter got there, the babysitter told me that Azriel had been living with them for quite some time already, and that Jasmine would pick her up for a few hours and then go and drop her back off. But that, you know, they claimed that she had a bedroom at their house, and, you know, they were the ones supporting her and this and that. And so that's whenever the babysitter let me know what was really going on.
Okay, so you can't testify from personal knowledge that she had that Azriel was actually living in that apartment where the drugs were found. Is that true or not true?
True.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Okay. Ms. Schulte, anything further from the department?
No additional evidence, Rest.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else have anything else to present to the court other than recommendation from the ad litem?
Judge, I would just, for the purpose of the record, request a continuance at this time for further time to locate my client that I've been unable to speak to in the last 60 days.
All right. Has she known how to contact you, Ms. Grant?
Yes, Your Honor, my contact information has remained stagnant for the last 2 years.
All right. And to your knowledge, has she made any attempts to contact you or your office?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Then that request for continuance will be denied. Okay. Mr. Adams, recommendations.
Recommend that Jasmine Gonzalez rights be terminated to Azriel, that Jacob Rico be named sole managing conservator, and that Azriel's name be changed.
Okay. All right. And Casa, anything to add, either Ms. Ferrer or Mr. Valdez?
Casa has no concerns, Your Honor. Jacob's been a great father to Azriel stepping up. We're hopeful that he becomes the sole managing conservator.
Okay. All right then. Based on the evidence I've heard today, as well as the exhibits that have been admitted, I do find that it's in Azriel's best interest that the father, Jacob Rico, be named sole permanent managing conservator of Azriel. I further find it's in the best interest of the child parental rights of the mother, Jasmine Gonzalez, be terminated. I'll terminate those rights today based on Texas Family Code section 161.001, subsections B, 1N as in Nancy and O. I will, side note, I believe that possibly Ms. Gonzalez exposed Azriel to the potential of these drugs that we've heard testimony about, but I don't believe legally I've heard enough evidence to support D&E findings. I will dismiss the department, CASA, and all other court-appointed relationships after all appellate and de novo periods have expired, and I will order that Azriel's name be changed. All right, since we have a final resolution in this case, there'll be no further hearings set. Mr. Rico, congratulations, and we all appreciate the work you've done and the fact that you've shown to be an excellent father for Azriel. She's a lucky little girl.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, there'll be no
Judge, the
further hearings
mother's
set.
ready
So
to
we will stand in
proceed.
recess.
But yeah, the mother's ready to proceed, and I think that the parents are not in agreement as to how they want to proceed today.
Or you tell me one parent is, one parent isn't?
Correct, Judge.
All right. I need to talk, I guess, to the lawyers so I understand what's going on.
Yeah, and if the two lawyers and the two parents need to talk before we get started, that's fine too. But
okay.
Haley, are you back?
Yes, I can put them in a breakout room.
Okay, all right. All right, where do we stand?
Judge, I think that the parents and the attorneys will agree that the department will be continued as temporary managing conservator of the child.
Okay, sorry, Todd, I didn't mean to interrupt. None of this is on the record because we haven't called the case yet. I didn't know if we wanted to.
No,
let the judge call it then.
We're here on an adversary hearing. Mr. Albee is with us for the department. Ms. Nelson is with us for CASA. Mr. Harris is with us representing the child. Mr. Matthew Lingenfelter is with us, represented by Mr. Pirtle, who is with us, and Mrs. Lingenfelter is with us, represented by Stacy Grant, who is with us. I have Brian Almendares and Jessica Lepe in the waiting room. Do they need to come in to hear this?
If you can bring them in, Judge, so they'll be present when I make my announcements.
Go ahead. Okay.
Thank you. Judge, the parents, along with their attorneys, Mr. Harris and I have been able to reach an agreement that the department will be continued as temporary managing conservator of this child, that the parents will agree to work services as determined are needed, that currently the child is in the hospital, that as long as he's in the hospital, the parents will have as much supervised visitation as they would like to exercise with the child. We'll reevaluate visitation after the child's released from the hospital. In the meantime, we're looking at a relative that has been provided to us by Mr. Lingenfelter as a possible placement until we can figure out all of the issues that are caused the child to become in care in the first place.
All right. All right, Ms. Grant, is this your client's agreement?
It is, Your Honor. I would just like to ask her on the record, Ms. Lincoln, is this your agreement?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Thank you. Pass, Judge.
All right, Mr. Pirtle, is this your client's agreement?
Yes, Your Honor. And again, I'd like to ask my client on the record.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right. And Mr. Harris, are you in agreement representing the child?
I am.
All right. And Ms. Nelson, is CASA in agreement?
Yes.
All right, then. I will approve that agreement. I will continue the department as temporary managing conservator, continue John's current placement, obviously in the hospital. You can, y'all can discuss what happens when he gets out of the hospital. Maybe we'll have a placement by then. I will approve the agreement that the parents will have any and all supervised visitation while John's in the hospital as allowed by the hospital under their rules for parents. All right, we'll set the status hearing where we'll discuss services for the parents. That will be set for August 18th, 2023. That will be by Zoom like today's hearing. So parties and attorneys can go on the court's online docket a day or two in advance of August 18th to see exactly what time that hearing will take place. I don't know that we need to address it today. Mr. Pirtle has filed an answer with a counterclaim and more specifically special exceptions. Basically, Mr. Pirtle, the gist of what I take is that you're saying you want them to replead to list only the grounds for termination under section 161.001 that they actually have some proof and intend to offer proof on. Is that basically the gist of your special exceptions?
That's it, Judge.
Okay. If y'all can't come to an agreement, we'll set it for a hearing, but I typically do that. We can get rid of all the grounds that the department doesn't plan to offer. So,
yeah.
Okay.
I will file a minute pleading, but I want to wait for a little while first.
Okay, sure. All right, then. I appreciate y'all working that out. So I'll see you back on August 18th. We can talk about the service plans for the parents. And if the parents want to get started early, that's always a great sign because that means it's usually a shorter case. So,
Yes, sir.
Again, I
And Your
appreciate
Honor, did I?
What?
My apologies, Judge. Did I, my phone cut out. I wanted to make sure if I heard or not whether we are ordering today an expedited home study on the brother of Mr. Lingenfelter.
I will be happy to. I never heard a name, so.
Okay, Mr. Lingenfelter, could you provide your brother's name, please, for the court?
Yes, Christopher.
We have no objections to that, Judge.
Okay. All right. In addition to my previous ruling, then I will order an expedited home study on Christopher Thomas. Okay. Appreciate you. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that you guys know there is a placement located.
Well, we can always, is the placement a relative?
No, it's not.
Okay,
I just wanted it to be known.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens when John gets
Okay.
out of the hospital, but obviously the court always tries to place with family when the court can, so.
Okay.
Okay, appreciate y'all working that out. I'll see you back on August 18th. We'll stand in recess and everyone have a good weekend.